In today's video, we're looking at a retirement case study from my friend Ken Malone. Earlier this year, his spouse of over 50 years passed away, and now he has to figure out how to make things work financially with her passing. Luckily, they did have some life insurance that he'll receive, and he has his Social Security benefit. So let's look at the numbers and figure out what his retirement will look like from an income standpoint, what would be sustainable. We also have to look at making sure that he doesn't spend down all of his money, because if later on in life he needs to be in a care facility, there needs to be money left over to cover that additional expense if it comes up. We also want to explore how his plan will change from a tax standpoint. Going from married filing jointly to a single filer will impact his taxes. So what will that realistically look like? And we also want to explore the different ways that he could invest that life insurance payout and some of the potential pros and cons of different approaches as far as from an income standpoint, as well as for leaving a legacy or at least leaving money left over for long-term care expenses. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So this is a special case study that I wanted to put together for my friend Ken Malone. I've obviously changed the names and some of the numbers in order to protect his identity, but if you're watching, you'll know this applies for you. So let's jump right into the case study. Let's look right into the numbers, and we'll do a breakdown of all these different areas. So on the screen in front of us, you can see here an overview of his retirement income plan. So from the life insurance payout, Ken will receive $200,000, and his total monthly retirement paycheck is looking like it'll be about $33.80 per month. So where is that coming from? Well, let's look at a breakdown over time and look at the cash flow. So beginning here in 2025, Ken has, of course, his Social Security benefit of $2,200 a month. So here on the left-hand side, we're looking at the monthly income amount, and along the bottom of this graph, we're going year by year. And Ken is 76 years old, so we have to plan. We want to plan for more than 5 years or even 10 years. It's possible Ken could live much longer than that. So we want to make sure that whatever plan we put together, however much income he begins taking from his portfolio, that it's going to be sustainable for as long as he might live. So starting out in 2025, you can see here on the graph we have two colors, a dark blue and a light blue. Now the dark blue represents his Social Security benefit, and you can see that over time it kind of trends upwards, and that's because he'll receive cost of living adjustments. He's been on Social Security for several years now. He's seen how those take effect and how he gets little increases over time, so we're going to plan on that continuing. Now in addition to that, the light blue here, this represents taking money out of the portfolio. So it looks like he would start out taking out about $1,180 a month for a total monthly income, like I said earlier, about $33.80 per month. Now, luckily, this looks like it's going to be sustainable and basically replace the Social Security benefit that Barbie was receiving before she passed away. So this will essentially replace the income that he lost. Now, obviously, his monthly expenses are going to be different now that his wife has passed away. Now, I've just seen in my experience, it's not always the case that your expenses go down when a spouse passes away, but it is, it is possible. So as a baseline, what I like about this plan so far is that he's essentially replacing the income lost from the Social Security benefit, from Barbie's spousal Social Security benefit. So let's look at over time realistically, as he's spending down this $1,100 a month, about $1,100 to $1,200 a month, what is happening to his portfolio? So I'm going to flip over to another screen, because what we want to make sure is that if he's taking out this much per month, that he's not basically running the portfolio all the way in the ground and running out of money, just in case he needs those funds for long-term care expenses later on. So on the screen in front of us, what we're looking at is a projection of his portfolio starting today and running out about 15 years into the future. Now, obviously, he could live longer than that. He may live short, may not live that long, but we want to, 15 years taking him from where he's at today at 76. This takes him into his early 90s, and it's a decent estimate for a single male in retirement. So what the different lines on this chart represent is it represents a historical analysis of investing $200,000 in a diversified portfolio, both in safe investments and in a diversified stock portfolio. And essentially what we're doing is we're looking at different scenarios of investing over 15 years. Now, what's baked into the software is we're actually looking at market returns going all the way back to 1870, all the way up to the present, to 2025, to the most recent month. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, all right, what if somebody retired and over a 15-year period of time, what if the market was really great? They just had, the best luck, the best 15 years, that we've seen over the last 155. Or, what if they have just the worst luck? And basically for the next 15 years, the market is just horrible. And then really is what we're looking at kind of everything in between. Pretty good years, not so good years, to kind of give, hopefully the idea here is that as we look at really good examples and really really bad examples over the last 155 years of investing. The purpose of this is to give you a really good sense of kind of what is the potential outcome. How do things look if things go poorly, and how do things look if things go pretty good or really good? And so that's the difference that we're looking at here over time. So on the screen, I'm going to just scroll down here to this table, which gives us a summary. So we're going to focus here on the median example. What this is essentially saying is that over the last 155 years, what is typical over 15 years of investing? Well, what would be typical of someone starting with $200,000 and pulling out about this $1,100 to $1,200 a month is that at the end of this 15 years, they would actually have more in their portfolio than when they began. So here you can see, Ken would have about just over $300,000 left in his portfolio. Now, what if things go really poorly, right? Just the market is horrible. We go through a 2008 crash. We go through a COVID crash. We go through, just think of all the things that have happened over the last 155 years financially. And, what if Ken just has the worst luck out of any investor and he just hits a bunch of these kind of back to back over the next 15 years? Well, in that case, as you might expect, he would end up with his portfolio would go from about $200,000 down to about $145,000 by the end of this 15-year period of time. So is that what's most likely? No, that's not what's most likely, but I think it's valuable to look at that to just see, okay, worst case scenario, what can we historically, what would that have looked like? Now, on the flip side, sometimes things go really well, and so it's a good idea to kind of have a sense of what that could be. And so in a best case scenario, let's just say the next 15 years are far above average, then could be looking at a situation of having over $800,000. But realistically, what's most likely would be somewhere here between $240,000 to $410,000. Now, this is after 15 years of pulling out that $1,100 to $1,200 a month over a 15-year period of time and still having about what you started with, a little more, and maybe even up to about double of what you started with. So this is really good news for Ken, because what it means is maybe if after 10 years he has to go into an assisted living care facility, and instead of needing $3,500 a month to cover his expenses, what if he needs $5,000 a month or $6,000 a month? Well, what that means is there would be extra money in the portfolio that if he really needed to, he could draw down on that in order to cover that expense. So let's look at his income plan from a tax standpoint, because obviously if he has this money invested, he's receiving Social Security income. I mentioned already that he's a single tax filer now, used to be married filing jointly. What would his income plan look like from a tax standpoint? So let's hop over there now. For those of you that have watched a lot of my videos, this looks a little bit different than maybe what what types of plans that we've seen that I've shown on this channel before. But you can see it's kind of interesting. So what we're looking at on this table here is essentially different distribution strategies, how to take money out of the portfolio, and what would be the average tax rate, total amount of taxes paid over time, the total net income, and the total net legacy at client or when Ken passes away. And so because there's a couple of things that are happening here. So first, I'm just going to point out the obvious thing here, which is regardless of which distribution strategy Ken decides to pursue, his average tax rate over his lifetime is going to be 0. Taxes paid, federal income taxes are going to be 0. Total net income is going to be the same regardless. Now, the reason for this really low tax rate is because a couple of things. Even though Ken is a single tax filer, the tax code is set up very favorably for retirees. So number one, when you receive a life insurance payout, that money is received tax-free. Now, once that money is invested, the only money I should say that's even subject to tax is any growth on those investments. And so, for example, when you have money invested, it's typically you receive dividends and you receive interest. Okay, so those dividends and interest are subject to taxes. Now, also with investing, the value of the investments can go up over time. So, for example, if you purchased Apple stock and you bought it for $500 a share, and then later on you sold those shares for $1,000, then when you sold that stock for $1,000, you don't pay taxes on the full $1,000. The only part of that that's subject to tax is the growth. Now, luckily for investing, capital gain rates are more favorable than ordinary income. They're more favorable than interest income or than wages or anything like that. And so because of those favorable tax rates, and because we're starting with a completely tax-free portfolio, the life insurance payout, very little of that, it's a fraction of that overall monthly income amount that's even subject to taxation. Now, the second thing to look at for Ken's scenario is Social Security. Again, Social Security is set up so that if your retirement income is primarily taken from just Social Security, the tax code is set up so that you have a very favorable tax rate. Essentially, it's set up so that you're not going to pay anything on your taxes. The only time that your Social Security benefit is subject to taxation is if you have significant other sources of income, like taking money out of a retirement account or from a pension or rental income or working and receiving wages. And so since he's taking money out of the portfolio, that amount that he's taking out of the portfolio is going to have little impact on increasing his taxable income to the point where his Social Security will become taxable. So essentially, he'll be receiving his Social Security income tax-free, and then he'll be receiving most of that portfolio income tax-free. Now, on top of that, you have the standard deduction for a retiree. So you have the standard deduction plus, because Ken is over age 65, he gets a larger standard deduction. And in addition to that, even though he doesn't even need it, for the next 4 years, there's also an additional tax deduction for seniors that will take effect for 25, 26, 27, and 2028 under the Big Beautiful Bill. So essentially, from a tax standpoint, Ken is in a really good place. Essentially, every dollar he pulls out he's going to be able to keep. He doesn't have to worry about withholdings, setting money aside for taxes. He's in really good shape. Now, how could that be different? Or I should say, where could that possibly go wrong? Let's say, for example, Ken decides, in 5 years from now, let's assume that his portfolio's let's just assume it's had a lot of growth, and he decides in one single year to pull out an extra $50,000 or something. Well, in that instance, it would be possible that a portion of that money that he pulls out would be subject to tax. But again, because of long-term capital gain rates, his taxation on that would be very favorable, and he'd probably end up paying very little taxes on that even larger distribution. So from a tax standpoint, Ken looks like he's in good shape. So now let's explore different ways that he could invest. If we look at investing on a scale of being very conservative to being a little more aggressive, is one of these approaches give him the potential for higher income? And with that higher income, or I should say with a more aggressive portfolio or more conservative portfolio, what kind of risks are involved with that to help him be well informed to make a good decision about how he chooses to have that money working for him? So now that we've looked at the taxes for Ken's plan, we're going to look at different ways that he can invest and the impact that would have on his expected monthly income. If he's invested more aggressively or more conservatively, how would that impact the potential for monthly income? So let's jump over to that now. So on the screen in front of us, what you can see is we're modeling out 3 separate investment strategies. One where Ken is invested more aggressively, one where he has more of a balanced, moderate approach, and a strategy that's more conservative. What I'm talking about here when I talk about conservative versus aggressive, I'm talking about the amount of your money that's invested in a diversified portfolio of one category, which is stocks. And what this means is investing a little bit of your money in thousands of the best companies in the world. When we invest in the market as retirees, and frankly, what most people should do, is you shouldn't just try and pick the best company and put all your eggs in one basket and bet on one company doing well. Because you know what? You might be right, and your money could grow. You could double, triple, and even 10x your money. However, if you're wrong, the results are catastrophic. And as a retiree, there's not time to earn more money and to invest in different things. So we have to take a diversified approach so that we can plan on the ups and downs of the market. But we can have confidence saying, okay, historically, when the market goes down, it does come back up as long as we're well diversified. So one portion of your money is invested in the market, and that's where you get your growth from. And on the flip side, the other category is investing in a diversified portfolio of bonds. And this is essentially making loans to companies and receiving guaranteed or contractually guaranteed interest payments from those companies, and also investing in high yield cash. Now, historically, the way that these two categories have worked is they kind of offset each other. Is that when the market is down, usually bonds go up in value. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened most of the time. On the flip side, when stocks are up, bonds are usually just kind of humming along, not just earning a couple % per year. But when you mix these two, it's like a good marriage. You have a husband and wife that have different strengths and different qualities, and they complement and offset each other. And when you put them together, was the saying that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? And so that's how it is with investing. When you combine these two categories of investments together, the result is usually a stronger result than investing in just one thing or the other. And so on the screen, you can see this bar chart. And essentially, we're saying that with a more aggressive portfolio, it might be possible for Ken to have a higher monthly income. So if you remember from the main plan overview, we're looking at a monthly income of about $33.80 per month. With a more aggressive portfolio, he might be able to have an extra $50, $60 a month, about $34.40 a month. Now, if he's invested more conservatively, so more of his money invested in bonds rather than stocks, then maybe a slightly lower monthly income is what would be realistic. So this isn't about like a right or wrong strategy. It's about finding the right balance that's going to be sustainable over the long term that meets the multiple objectives that the retiree has. Now, I'll just say in the case of Ken, you're 76 years old, you don't have a lot of experience investing. It might be kind of tough to go from from very little experience and having most of your money invested in the market for the first time at 76 years old. And so for that reason, that's why for the main plan, I put together and used a moderate portfolio, which is about a 60-40 split between stocks and bonds, which the benefit of that is that you're still going to have enough money invested in stocks so that you're able to benefit from growth that happens in the market. But not if, but when the market goes down, you have enough money that's invested very conservatively and safely that you can draw down on, give your stocks time to recover. It's all about finding the right balance to meet the income plan needs and also that makes sense given someone's experience with investing generally. So hopefully from this case study, you've gotten some insights into how somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience investing and has just gone through the loss of their spouse, how they could put together a realistic retirement income plan, taking everything into account, looking at taxes, sustainable monthly income, and different ways that you could invest in order to try and capture different positives or downsides of different mixes of investments. So after watching this video, if you'd like some help running through your particular situation, click the link in the description and schedule a free consultation. I'd be happy to sit down with you one-on-one and help you navigate your retirement income plan. So until next time, I hope you have a great week and I'll see you in the next video.